You know I'm right. Nick Durst here with Joe Calabrese. And Joe, today we are finally getting someone on our show who knows about food like us because we are big foodies, and I think we have the perfect guest here, crossover appeal between food and sports.
I love that.
Absolutely. Perfect crossover. She currently works as a sideline reporter for the NFL on CBS. She's also covered other sports as well. She's a former Red Sox reporter for NESN. And we're going to reveal her culinary talents in 1 minute, but we're really excited to have her on, Miss Jenny Dell. Jenny, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to be here. So thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course. Now, I have to ask you, when you were younger, maybe high school, middle school, how many times did people say to you, dude, I'm getting a Dell, to quote the famous commercial?
Okay. I don't know what the rating, on this show is, but the worst part in high school, the slogan for Dell computers were Dells are easy.
Wow. Not good.
Not fun. Not fun to deal with that, let me tell you. But yes, I still to this day, or they're like, are you related to Dell Computers? Are you related to Michael Dell? And I'm like, no, not at all.
So the big question is, Jenny, do you use Dell or Mac?
I use a Mac. I think I have a Dell for my work laptop though, but I use my personal as a Mac.
You got it. It's much more up to speed, and I'm on a Mac right now, so. I can't blame you. I was always a Dell guy, but then started working and how to use a Mac, and just haven't looked back since.
Just don't go back. I know. Now every time I use a Mac, even with my work computer, I'm like, how does this work? What am I doing with this? Like you get so comfortable using the Mac that when you use a Dell, you're all thrown off.
No doubt about it.
Yourself.
Now, of course, for our video viewing audience here, not our audio audience, we are looking live at Jenny's house here. We have a Red Sox and a Yankee jersey in plain sight. Of course, then there's the Padres one as well. Jenny's husband, of course, Will Middlebrooks, played in Major League Baseball and was a Red Sox and also a Padre. And Jenny, a big Yankee fan. So the big question here is, your kids, what are they fans of?
So they're definitely Red Sox if we have to play. I grew up in Connecticut. I grew up on the southern side of Connecticut. So it was like anyone from a certain line up was Red Sox fans. My parents are from Brooklyn, New York. So I grew up watching the Yankees and the Mets, actually. And then I got the job with the Red Sox, and my dad was like, what are you doing to me? And it really wasn't until I got him on the field at Yankee Stadium for a Sox-Yanks game that he was like, okay, I'm all right with this job. But the Red Sox hold a very, very special place in my heart, working for them for 2 years, meeting my husband there. I mean, just everything with the city of Boston, like that. I would say definitely now my fandom goes towards the Red Sox 100%.
So you got Jeter and Mo on the background over there.
Okay. So
yeah.
So there's a cool story for the Mariano jersey that's back here. So Will, my husband, is actually the last player to hit a home run off of Rivera. Nice. So after he hit that home run, he came back. I forget, they went into extras. I don't remember if the Sox or the Yankees won that game, but Will came into the clubhouse at Yankee Stadium, and there was a Mariano jersey hanging in his locker, and a handwritten note that said something to the extent of, Will, I hope you always remember this home run. Like, I certainly will never forget it, or something, because he knew that a few games from then was going to be his last game ever. So that's very special. And then Jeter, is Derek Jeter. So players always exchange jerseys. That's like something that they do at the beginning of a series. You can kind of be like, oh, whose jersey do you want from the other team or whatnot? So we have a whole closet full, I probably shouldn't say this, but like of signed amazing jerseys that we need to display at some point. But the Yankees one have made it up, and then obviously some of my husband's.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. I wanted to ask you, when you were younger, did you have any dreams about working for the Yankees? Because ultimately you ended up working for the Red Sox, and obviously it's a little weird, but the Connecticut thing, I get how it's split, because of proximity to both places. But did you have any dreams of working for the Yankees? Did you want to?
It's so funny that you say when you were younger, and we started off this whole chat about cooking, because when I was younger, all I wanted to do was be a chef. So I took classes at the Culinary Institute when I was like 12. I applied to culinary school and then ended up applying to UMass just on a whim. Went to UMass. But that's all I wanted to do. I started my own catering company in like the end of middle school and in high school. It was funny now thinking of it. But yeah, my passion, my love was cooking and food. And working on TV was actually something I never thought about doing until after I graduated college.
So you mentioned you mentioned UMass Amherst. When you went there, you did sports management, hospitality, tourism. What was your goal there? To come when you came out of school, what were you hoping to do, and did you do any sort of internships or anything of that sort while you were at school there?
Yeah. So when I was at school, I started in hospitality, with the focus. Initially, I was going to do restaurant management, because after I decided that I didn't want to be a chef or a cook, I was like, okay, maybe I'll open my own restaurant. And UMass has a great hospitality program, like top of the line. Then I picked up a second major in sport management at UMass, and I got an internship working for the UMass athletic department in the advancement office. And I would help out with a lot of the past alumni coming back and planning these massive events for them. And then I was like, that's what I want to do. I was like, cooking, I'll always be able to do. That'll always be a passion. I'll be able to cook for my friends and my family forever. But the marketing and event planning really kind of took off in my mind. So when I first graduated, I graduated UMass early, and I got a job at ESPN. And the goal was to eventually make my way up to marketing and advertising for ESPN. I wanted to do event planning for the ESPYs, for Super Bowl parties, kind of these big, I wanted to do something in sports, but more on the event side. And I got approached in the cafeteria about working on TV, and the rest is history.
Crazy stuff. We're gonna get to ESPN, but I want to know, when you first started going to UMass, how much did you go and get New England clam chowder and lobster rolls? And did you miss that? And is that part of the reason why you ended up back at NESN to just enjoy the great food up there?
I love Massachusetts. I mean, growing up in Connecticut, we didn't really have like much going on in the sports world except for UConn basketball, which was huge, obviously. So once I got to UMass and I saw, 2004 was my freshman year. So it was Yankees, Red Sox. My freshman year, I was kind of thrown into this like crazy Red Sox world. My dog, hold on one sec. My dog wants to get out of the man cave.
No problem. But as we look here, Joe, at the man cave, we get a better look at all the great memorabilia there.
I know. Sorry about that. All right. So he was gonna start barking if I didn't just open the door. So I apologize. So when I first got to UMass, I think that's when I like truly learned the passion of New England sports. Like obviously I loved sports growing up. I always wanted to be involved with it in some capacity. But it was really UMass that made me be like, whoa. And that's when I went to Fenway for the first time and fell in love. And then kind of with the history of baseball. So I think that I love that aspect of it. And what's better than restaurants in Boston? Like that, I miss food. I live down in Florida now, and Will and I talk about it all the time. We're like, oh my God, can we just go to the North End and get some Italian? Or you just miss food from up north when you're down here. That's for sure.
So Connecticut, the only place I ever ate, I think, was Pepe's Pizza, as far as the pizza places go, which is pretty good. But Joe and I are from New York. We're actually from the pizza capital of the United States, which is Staten Island, New York. So I just want to know your pizza rankings here as far as the Northeast, or if you want to include Florida. I'm sure Florida is probably last on the pizza list, but the places you've hit in between New England and Connecticut and New York, and maybe even Chicago. I'm sure you've been there.
Yeah, you mentioned Pepe's. So it's Pepe's, Sally's, and Modern. Or Pepe's and Sally's are like the famous New Haven pizzas. And then Modern was probably the favorite of my family. So it was very similar type of pizza. I've been out to Chicago many times, so the whole deep dish side of things. I would say like I love a good New York slice. There's just something like that's like authentic. I don't know if I should say authentic. That's like when I think of pizza, I think about like a slice of New York pizza, like a good, even if it's just cheese. I mean that you don't find down here.
Yeah,
Like,
I think Joe probably will disagree with me here, but if I'm eating pizza, I need to have just cheese. I don't want meat on my pizza. I need to just that's not pizza to me. It's just like it's too many toppings. I'm so anti pepperoni pizza. I think it totally ruins a pizza.
okay, you're gonna hate what I'm about to say then because I agree when you're thinking like just real authentic pizza, it's just cheese. But if my husband and I are ordering, he got me started on this, but the pepperoni pineapple pizza.
Ugh, that sounds disgusting.
Oh,
I
no.
know, it's so good. I know it sounds terrible, but it's so good. It's like the little salty and sweet, and everyone's so against it. And the first time he was like, "Oh, you need to try this," I was like, "That's gross." And now that's probably what we ordered 90% of the time.
Well, I guess things are different down in Florida.
I know. Blame Florida. It's all Florida's fault.
How are the bagels in Florida? I heard they were pretty bad too.
They're pretty bad, and I don't know if it's just like the New York thing, like they say the water makes the bagels better.
Right.
Like maybe our water just sucks down here, but I have yet to find a good bagel. Anytime I go back to Connecticut, my sister lived in New Haven, so I'd get like really good bagels there. My aunt and uncle are in Long Island, so anytime they would come, they would bring bagels.
Nice.
I just can't find it. Maybe I need to like start making bagels.
I don't know if they have as many good bodegas down there, or
Yeah.
other places like that where you could get the good bagels like you can.
No, they don't have anything. And maybe it's the area we live in. I mean, we're in Boynton Beach, so it's like,
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, it's in between West Palm and Fort Lauderdale. And I mean, great, beautiful, family-oriented place, but not good for food, really.
It's tough.
I know.
Well, we're gonna get into some of your favorite meals you've eaten and whatnot, but I want to go back here to your start at ESPN. How did you just get a role there with the event production staff?
So it's funny you asked. So I was graduating early from UMass. My ex-boyfriend's best friend's father was a VP at ESPN at the time. So kind of a weird path, weird journey to follow along now. And he got me in for an interview for a position as an administrative assistant for 3 coordinating producers. So I went in, was I even 21? I think I just turned 21. And I sat down with these 3, now at the time I had no idea like what I was really walking into, but 3 of the top producers in the country. And I was applying to be their assistant. And we just like chatted the whole time. They didn't even ask. I was so proud. I was at the top of my class at UMass and I did all these, extracurriculars, and they didn't even ask about any of that. And I was like, I walked out of the interview and it was 2 hours. My mom was like, I called her. She was like, "So did you get the job?" I was like, I honestly don't even know what just happened. I was like, we just chatted for 2 hours and then I left, and they didn't offer anything. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, we'll be in touch situation. And I was driving back to UMass, and by the time I got back, they called and they said, "Listen, we don't want you to be our assistant. We think that it would be great if you came on in production." And I was like, "Production? I don't know much about production. I know nothing about production, but like, let's do it. I'm here for you. Like, thank you for the opportunity." So I got hired on as a production assistant, a temporary production assistant for the NBA for ESPN. And I started a few months later in January, and I had a lot to learn. So I started with a group of around 25 temporary position, PAs. And they all had done this is like all they studied. This is what they did in college. They all, worked for their college TV station. They all knew everything about production. So I felt way behind the mark, but I also was like, okay, these people wouldn't have given me this opportunity if they didn't think that I could do it. So I just was trying to be like first person there, last person to leave, learn everything I possibly could. And I fell in love with production. I still love kind of the behind the scenes aspect of TV. And I'm able to kind of use that in what I do now, which is great. But it was probably 2 or 3 months into my time at ESPN doing production that someone asked about the whole on-camera situation, and I was like, sure, I'll try it. And I don't know if you guys are into fantasy sports much, but it was Matthew Berry.
Wow.
He approached me, and the way he did it was funny because I didn't know who he was. And again, I probably should have. This is when fantasy football was just really starting up. So it was back in 2008. And every day I'd see this guy in the cafeteria. We'd always chat, but he'd be like, "Oh, hey, Jenny," because there weren't many women that worked there. So, and I was like, "Hey," and he'd always laugh at the fact that I didn't know his name. And then finally one day I was like downstairs because we were in the basement. That's where all the production assistants were held at the time. And I looked up on the TV. It was like midnight, and there was like a fantasy football show on it. I was like, "That's the guy I see every day." So the next day I was like, "Hey, Matthew," and he's like, "You figured it out." And we just had this funny exchange. And he was like, he's like, "I like your personality. Do you know much about football?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love football. I'm very comfortable, with my football knowledge." And he was like, "All right, I want you to come down and audition. We need some more females to be talking about fantasy football." And that's how it started. That's how it all began.
Wow. So obviously that ESPN cafeteria was career changing for you. I've heard some great stories about the cafeteria. We've had many ESPN guests on, Adnan Virk, Doug Kazarian, Tim Kirkshin. What was your favorite food in the cafeteria there? Obviously, we know Henrik Lundqvist always enjoyed when they would make some Swedish meatballs for him, and Steph Curry loves the curry. But what can you tell us about that cafeteria there? Because we always hear such great things about it.
Okay, every Tuesday and Thursday, and again, I haven't worked there since 2012, so this probably has changed. But every Tuesday, Thursday, they would do buffalo chicken wraps. And I swear they're like the best buffalo chicken wraps I have ever had. I don't know what's so special about them, but the way, I don't know if it was the chicken that they were using or the hot sauce, and then they would press them on the grill so they'd be like nice and crispy, crunchy. I dream about those things. So if you ever get to ESPN, just see, I don't know if they're still there, but if they are, please get a buffalo chicken wrap.
That's funny. So obviously you start with the fantasy football and you do stuff for ESPN.com. Any nerves at all? What was the audition process like, if any? And what was it like when you first started working on air?
I think that's what actually made me somewhat successful, is I had no expectations because this is not what I was hoping to do. So I just went in there and had fun with it. I was never nervous. I was 21. So I was just like, "Hey, yeah, let's talk fantasy football. Like, let's go." And I was myself. Like, I just didn't try to put on this like perfect, I'm a reporter thing, because I wasn't that at all. So I started doing fantasy football, and then that role increased. I had a football show with Tim Hasselbeck and Teddy Bruschi. So that was something that was really cool as like a kid, now looking back. And then the role grew more and more. So anytime a celebrity or athlete would come into ESPN, I would interview them for ESPN.com. So it was interviewing like the top celebrities and athletes in the world that were coming through. And I just had fun with it. And I got to cover Super Bowls. I got to do so much. And I still actually was working in production. So I got hired on full-time in production. So that was my main job. Like, I was there to be, do production and features and graphics. And then on the side, I was doing all this stuff for .com. So I really got to grow in production and learn that side of TV. Well, also, like, during lunch break, I'd run over and like interview Matthew McConaughey. I'm like, what am I doing? What is this like?
All right.
Wow. Yeah, it was wild. And then so I was there for 4 years, and then the Red Sox job opened up, and I still remember to this day laughing that my agent was even putting my audition tape in for that job. I was like, there's no way I'm getting that job. And somehow I ended up getting it.
So what was the actual ESPN on-air audition process like? How many times did you audition before they knew that they wanted to have you do other hits in other places? And did they treat your audition any differently, being that you were already a company employee as opposed to somebody that they were bringing in who had previously had talent experience from elsewhere?
I believe they probably did treat it differently because I wasn't also hired on. Like, there was never, I signed, I think, some sort of agreement that any time that I would do I was getting paid for production. And then it was like, hey, anytime you do anything for ESPN.com, you'll get this amount of money or whatever it was. It wasn't a lot at all. But my audition process, I literally went in after I talked to Matthew. I met with the heads of ESPN.com, it was Anthony Mormile and Kieran Portley. And Port is actually now my boss for CBS. So we go back. He's one of the first people to put me on air. And they said, okay, write a script, and we're going to put you in a in front of a green screen, in front of a teleprompter, and just see if you have any kind of on-camera presence. Because I didn't know. I was like, all right, let's do it. So I wrote two scripts. One was about lacrosse, and then one was about the WNBA. I did like superlatives of the WNBA because my NBA season was ending, and I was doing some WNBA work at the time. And I remember going in, and I had no idea how to read off a teleprompter. I was just, again, it's reading, but there is a skill when it comes to just like not doing this while you're reading and keep, learning the pacing and everything. So right. I read off the teleprompter. I was probably in there for 4 minutes, and then I walked out, and I had some other work to do. So then I just waited for them. I reached back out and was like, hey, what did you think of that? And I went and I met with them, and they're like, we think you have potential. Like, we want to start using you. At the time, it was they're doing AccuScore reports. So there was a company that would do these fantasy football reports of like, okay, if this happens, there's a 30% chance of this happening, whatnot. Mm-hmm. So they were like, we want to bring you in a couple times a week to do these AccuScore reports for fantasy football. And I was like, okay. And that's basically, there was no audition process for me when it came to that. I think because .com was still, growing and fantasy football was growing, it was like, hey, let's just throw her in on things. I'm sure now the process is very different. But yeah, it was really just me in front of a green screen and a teleprompter for like 4 minutes. And that's how it started.
Yeah, reading a teleprompter is hard the first time you do it, and you got to get the cadence down pat. And writing for a prompter is different than writing normally, so you also got to get used to that too. So give yourself a pat on the back. It's really hard to do on the first try. Because you mentioned an agent. So what was the process like for that? And did you hire an agent when you were at ESPN? Did that follow after you got to NESN?
So again, my whole story, everyone's like, tell me about how you got started. I'm like, my story is very strange. Like from start to finish, like the whole journey has just been weird, and it's all been about timing and right place, right time, and working your butt off and proving to people that you belong wherever you're getting these opportunities. So I went during that time when I was doing stuff for .com, I got a Facebook message from this agent who was kind of new in the game but worked for If Management, which is a great agency out of New York. And his name was Josh Santry, and he reached out and he said, hey, I've been watching some of your stuff. He's like, I play fantasy football, so like your videos just happen to pop up when I'm on ESPN.com. He's like, do you have representation? And I was like, ooh, an agent reached out. Like, this is fun. How does this work? So I ended up going to New York and meeting with him and kind of the head of If Management. And they explained how the agency, works and what that relationship is like. And I signed on the dotted line that day because I was just like, this is a huge opportunity. So he was always kind of just looking for other jobs out there. I got to the point at ESPN that I was like, okay, I either need to leave production and focus on on-air work full time, or I need to just stop with the on-air stuff and just focus on growing in production. Because I was getting to the point where I was doing like way too much and didn't have a second to breathe, and I needed to focus on one road or the other. And that's when the timing worked out with the Red Sox job. But I was with If all the way through my time at CBS, so all the way through ESPN and then the Red Sox, and I got my start at CBS with If Management as well. And now I'm with WME, and I love them. I loved If, they were great, and I'm excited to be with my new agency now.
So how does your production background help you in broadcasting? Because I always appreciate when I work in production with on-air talent and they they know what is going into me building a graphic for them or doing the research. And it always seems that those that understand the production aspect best are be able to put together the best hits on air.
It's so true. And it's not even just, I think that people who don't have an idea about what's going on behind the scenes don't appreciate every small detail of what it takes to put a product on air. So I was a production assistant. So I was the one that was packing bins at 5 a.m. to send out for your game. I was the one that was clipping clip reels and putting together packages so that your on-air hit looked, better and pristine. The graphics folks, like the amount of research and time and energy and detail that has to go into every little aspect to make this broadcast work. I think if you don't appreciate every part, like literally every job in that production truck, every job of people that are back in the studio working hard, you don't understand what it takes to put a whole broadcast on. If you just show up and you're like, yeah, I worked my butt off trying to like research for this game and come out and talk for a few minutes on air, like that's great. But when you really like get to know the people behind the scenes, they're the ones that are like putting the blood, sweat, and tears into it as well. And it couldn't work without every single person. So I think even little things, like if I hit up my producer during a college football game or NFL game and he says 1 second, I've worked with or I've shadowed other reporters that are like, but I have a really good hit, like this makes sense right now. And it's like, you don't know what's going on in the production truck right now. There might be like a fire back there and there's a million things going on, or like the graphics machine stopped working or populating. Like there's so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And if you can't just say, okay, totally understand, hit me up when you're good, then it's not a full team effort. So I think it made me not only appreciate, the job that everyone does, but also making sure every single person on that crew's name, like every single person that like go out and before COVID, like go grab beers with one of my closest friends on college football was our truck driver. Like he was like my dad. Like we were buds. We would hang out all the time. And it's like, you have to just appreciate every single person that's out there, because without all of them, the show doesn't go on. And also I think it just, having a different mindset for whether it's sideline reporting or anchoring for HQ, it's like, okay, I want to do this hit on, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes and the fact that he, used to watch Tom Brady when he was in college, whatever.
Right.
But like that extra step, it's like, okay, well, what can we do graphically to support this story? Can I reach out to Mahomes' family and see if there's any pictures of him like with an older Tom Brady, whatever it may be? Like, just if you kind of have that production mentality of how can we make this not only be great as a story on air, but what can we use to also supplement the story graphically or visually to make it better? So I feel like little things like that have just helped me along the way.
So before you go shipping up to Boston again, was there any sort of, well, obviously you mentioned it, you were surprised your agent put you in for that job and you got the call. Was there any sort of interview process or audition process for that? I can imagine there was a lot of candidates for that role.
Oh yeah. So Josh, my agent, let me know that he put my audition tape in, and like we both were kind of laughing on the phone. We're like, all right, this is like, we'll see what happens. Because at the time, Heidi Watney was the reporter there, and she was like a goddess in my eyes, and still is to this day. And I remember him being like, yeah, there was like a couple thousand applicants for the job. I was like, all right, well, clearly I'm not going to get that, but thank you for even thinking of me. And I'll always remember this. I was at a nearby gym by ESPN, and I wasn't working out. I was going in to grab a smoothie. And I was sitting there having my smoothie, and my agent called, and he's like, are you sitting down? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I just got a call from NESN. And I was like, why? He's like, you're in the top 10. I was like, what? Me? And he was like, yeah, you have to go up to Boston like later this week for an interview for the Red Sox job. And I was like, are you sure they didn't like mess up my name with someone? Like what? Because I had never done live TV at that point. everything I'd done had been for .com, but it's all been taped. I never did a live game. I never did sideline before. I was like, are we talking about the same job here? So sure enough, I ended up going up to Boston. It was like I want to say 3 or 4 month audition process.
Wow.
And it was intense. I mean, you go from not really auditioning and then doing all this great stuff with ESPN to like this intense, I mean, multiple hours and hours long meetings, just on camera work, questions about baseball, test knowledge. I mean, it was wild. And I remember every step along the way, I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this job, but I'm appreciating every moment of this audition process because I'm just going to take it all in and I'm learning so much from it. And it wasn't until I was down to the final 2, and I probably went up to Boston 5 or 6 times. And I mean, it's not only just meeting with NESN execs, it's like you're meeting with Tom Warner, like the owners of the Red Sox, Larry Lucchino. It was wild. And I went up when I was down to the final 2. And I remember driving up to Boston. I forgot who I was meeting with at the time, but it was someone for the job. And at the time, my agent was like, hey, I set you up for another interview while you're in Boston because you're already up there. I was driving up from Connecticut, which I was living at for ESPN. And he was like, you're already going to be up there, so you might as well just go up. And I was meeting with a local, I don't know if it was a CBS or ABC affiliate, to be a traffic reporter.
Wow.
And I went up and I met with the people at NESN, and then I was going over for this like other job interview. And I was sitting in the job interview and I had my phone kind of in between my legs during the job interview, which I shouldn't have. I don't know why I did. And I saw that NESN was calling. And I'm in this office of this other executive talking about being a traffic reporter in Boston. And I'm like, you can't just be like, excuse me one moment, like, hi, did I get a job? Like, what's going on? So, this is when it was the final three. So I end up ending that meeting. It went very well. I was excited about even the potential of being a traffic reporter in Boston, which would have been a great job. And I was in the lobby of this affiliate and I called NESN back and they said, we wanted to let you know you're in the final 2. Ooh. And then that's when it hit me and I was like, I might get this job. Like this might actually happen. And I drove back to Connecticut and I went to sleep, and the next morning was a Saturday. And at like 7 a.m. I got an email from NESN and they said, hey, can you just send over your list of references one more time? And I remember being like, okay, I don't want them to think I sleep in on Saturdays. I need to send this list over right now. And within like 20 minutes after that, I got a phone call and they said, you got the job.
Nice.
And I was like shocked. I remember bawling my eyes out. My boyfriend was upstairs and he heard me crying because it was like 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And he was like, you ran down the stairs and said, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, I got the job. And he was like, get off the phone. Like, stop crying to your new boss. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, hang up. And it's funny now. He ran back. He was a huge Red Sox fan. He ran back upstairs and he had an Ellsbury jersey. And he like threw the jersey at me and he was like, you did it. And it was like this wild, emotional 24 hours. And yeah, the head of NESN called and they said, are you ready to be really busy? And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So, wow. And that was an intense interview process though.
Must have been some great references, but it all started with a smoothie. What's the go-to smoothie? I think if you're having a smoothie, you got to do peanut butter and banana. I think that's the best one. No peanut butter in my smoothie. I want all fruit. I want strawberry, banana, blueberry, raspberry, acai, mango. I don't want anything to do with peanut butter. I don't want chocolate. I don't want any of that. Strawberry banana is good, but
strawberry banana.
I think banana is the staple. It's got to be in the smoothie.
Yeah, I didn't mean to like totally poo-poo your whole.
No, you didn't. You didn't. No worries. Yeah. Now you get the job and you get busy right away. How did you really learn on the job how to do that job? Because obviously it's very different coming from a studio setting to just go out there, being in a clubhouse every day, going to spring training and trying to integrate with the team and, you know, try to undig these stories. So what was it like learning on the fly, and how did you adapt to that scenario?
Do you know how scary it is to do something that you've never done for a team like the Boston Red Sox in the city of Boston? I mean, I was so nervous of making a single mistake. And I think at first I went from carefree, this is fun, even though it was for ESPN.com, like no pressure, we're going to tape this segment, to now being in front of an audience like Boston fans and Boston media. And at first, I don't think that I was allowing myself to just be me, because I was so wrapped up in just being this like perfect reporter. And I remember when I asked them, finally, when they called and they said I got the job, I was like, why me? I mean, you had girls that have been superstar reporters all over the country that have been vying for this job. And they said, because you were real, because you're authentic. And that's what we want to see in Boston. We don't want to see that perfect reporter. We want someone that you feel like you can sit down and grab a beer with on the couch, but also someone that knows your baseball. And that's why we picked you. And I think it took me a few months to just get back to being like, all right, I need to just chill out and stop trying to be someone I'm not, because there was just so much pressure. And I didn't want to let anyone down. And I didn't want to make a mistake and then hear my name all over the radio or all over Barstool for like the next week. And it was a lot of stress. And I think it was tough because people look at you and they say, you have this dream job. You know, you're in this amazing, incredible environment. You're covering, you know, one of the top teams in baseball at the time, though they were not, they were terrible. Top clubs in baseball. And I remember going home and just like crying almost after every game, because I just felt like I wasn't good enough to be in that spot. And it wasn't until I just woke up one day and I was like, you know what? Like, I got hired here for a reason. I need to just go out there and be myself. And if I mess up, I mess up. Like, nobody's perfect. I need to just chill out. And then I started, I think, getting into the zone and getting more comfortable with it. But it did take a while. And Boston's a scary market. It is a scary place to work. And there's nothing better than it when things are going well, and there's nothing worse when things aren't going so hot. So it was a quick, there was a quick wake up call throughout that whole process of like, all right, you're in the big leagues now. Like, not saying that ESPN wasn't, because obviously it was just a very different position. So it was just really relying on all the resources that they had. I had a great producer that had been covering the Red Sox for a very long time. I reached out to all the former reporters, Heidi Watney, Tina Stavasio, Hazel May, just getting any advice that I could, just to try and do the best that I could with that position. And after a while, like, you start getting into the flow. And 2012 was very difficult. The team, I think, had 69 wins all season. They were not happy. The players did not want to talk. And then 2013, obviously, they go on and win a world championship. So 2 very different years covering the team.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to spend a really, really good time there, I think. And that team was also the team that came off the marathon bombing. So everybody remembers that. And it seemed like everybody really rallied together around Boston during that period of time. So you got to be there. That was so cool. So who are your other resources that you usually go to when you're preparing for hits that you're going to do in game, or maybe you're preparing and doing prep for a player you might interview later? And I want to ask, has your husband, Will, been involved and been a resource for you now, you know, after you two started dating?
Yeah, he's a huge resource for me and everything I do. So he obviously had his baseball success, but he also is like a great football mastermind. He was signed to go to Texas A&M to play football in college, and football and baseball in college. And then the Red Sox signed him, and he didn't end up going to college, which I like to make fun of him for all the time. But he's a great asset to have, and he helps me out in my football prep all of the time. But I think that's something that anyone at any level can really learn off of, is just that if you ask for help, people are willing to help you. So in this industry, like, I think there's kind of this thought like, oh, the females are all against each other, and there's this whole like competitive issue between all the girls that are doing sideline, and that's absolutely not the case. It's like, I like to think of it more as a sorority. I mean, some of these girls are some of my closest friends. We all text each other, whether it's girls from ESPN or, I mean, we are all in touch. We all try to give each other advice. If it's like, oh, I've never covered a Florida football game before, like, what can I expect from Dan Mullen? Like, whatever the question is, it's like, you can reach out to your girls and everyone's there to be like, all right, this is what you need to do. This is who you need to stay away from. Like, it's like a good little community that we have going on. And I don't know why people think it's like such a, I don't know, negative, competitive aspect industry. I'm not sure. But
yeah, we had Tina Travasco on with us, and there's not a mean bone in her body. And you know, Joe works in Secaucus, so he knows Heidi Watney, and you know, it's great that they were able to reach out to him and they were able to give you advice, because some people would think, oh, well, this person is my replacement, I don't want them to do as well as me. But it was very nice that they were able to help you out there.
100%. And that goes for, I try to help out literally anyone and everyone. So I have girls reaching out to me all the time. Like, can you watch my reel? What do you think of this? Like, how can I get better? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, let's jump on a FaceTime and chat. And that's whoever is following me. So Gary Stridsky followed me with the Red Sox, and then Garen Austin. And the first time they stepped foot there, I'm like, here's my number. If you have any questions whatsoever, I am here. Like, what can I do to help you? And I think that's the way that it always should be. And when I first got the job at CBS, Tracy Wolfson right away reached out to me and was like, all right, let's chat. This is how, because I had never covered a football game before. So that's a whole other, then I get hired to work in football. So yeah, it's all just been a learning experience, and just like gathering little tidbits from each person that's done it and has done it well before you, and just passing that along. I mean, that's what you hope for, and that's really what I've seen from this industry.
So obviously you make the move to CBS. How did that opportunity come about for you, and what's the biggest difference between covering baseball and football?
Oh God. Okay, so I ended up leaving NESN after 2 years. My contract was up, and I was with my husband, who was a player on the team, and we were dating at the time, and we knew that it was definitely time that I leave the baseball world. And lucky for me, CBS hired me on as a NFL reporter, and I met with CBS, Fox, ESPN. I met with all the networks, and that's something that's so great about this Red Sox job, is it's really such a high-profile job that you have these opportunities now that these people have seen you, and it's like, okay, a lot of people, you look at Heidi Watney, you look at Jamie Erdahl, you see a lot of people going from that Boston market to a national market. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do next. So interviewed with all the networks, ended up, with CBS, and I've now been with them for 7 years, I believe. But that my first year at CBS was a very difficult transition as well, because I get hired on to a very high profile NFL job. I was with Dan Fouts and Ian Eagle on the B crew for CBS NFL. And I had never, like I said, I'd never covered a football game before. So I felt, much like my first few months with the Red Sox, I felt that maybe I didn't belong, or maybe the job was too big for me. And they always say, like, just go in there and fake it till you make it. And I did the best that I could, but I also think that I was a little bit hesitant to ask for help when I should have in that position. So with the Red Sox, you have to think baseball, you have 162 games. I had spring training. I had so many, every day I was out there getting reps and getting comfortable. With football, I had, I think, 1 or 2 preseason games and then 17 games. So by the time I got into the swing of things, because it's really, you have your game on Sunday, and then you have all week to think about that game. And then you have your game on Sunday. And it's like, if it doesn't go perfect, it's in your head, and you need to be perfect for the next time. And I should have just stopped and said, you know what, I could use a little bit of help and resource here. And Tracy always made herself completely open for that. But I think if I voiced that a little bit more to our talent department and to my producer, things probably would have gone a different way. So my second year, I went to college football, which at first, being from Connecticut, I was like, I don't know much about college football. Like, we only grew up watching the NFL. I know, I know the teams, I know the game of football, but I don't know the history of college. When I was very comfortable with kind of the NFL spot. And then I fell back in love with my job once I got moved to college, because I felt like the pressure was off in a sense. And I got to working in college and working in NFL are two very different things. So you have like a business side of things, which is, the high profile NFL. And then you have these college kids that like love to be on camera and want to showcase what they have for, future in the NFL. And the coaches they want to, discuss their school. They want to talk to you. So I totally was, at first I was like, oh my gosh, is this a step backwards? But I realized that it was the best thing that could have happened to my career. And now I'm lucky to cover both college and NFL for CBS. And it's been a fun journey since.
So now that you got to CBS and you started to covering football, you got to cover and see a bunch of different players and coaches end up playing out. Who were your favorite people at CBS to interview? Players, coaches, and who were the nicest people to you behind the scenes?
Oh my God. Everyone at CBS, honestly, CBS is like a family. So everyone there is amazing. And I know people always say like, oh, my company is so wonderful, but I cannot say enough good things about CBS in general. Working for them has been a dream. There's been times where like my daughter's been sick and they were like, family first. That's all that matters. Don't even think about anything else. And it's like companies don't typically in sports, like companies aren't like that. So it's been just such a blessing working for them. Some of my favorite interviews, gosh, there's been a ton of them. I mean, I'll always remember I got to interview Steve Smith when he declared that he was retiring. And I remember that was a huge moment because he didn't make it. He wasn't supposed to say that he was retiring at the time. It was after a Ravens game. And it was unexpected. And then he was crying and I was like crying. It was a whole emotional interview. But that's probably one of my favorite interviews just because it was like so unexpected. I've got to cover bowl games, which have been exciting, just SEC games, which have been wild. I don't know. There's not, it's always fun when you cover the Patriots and you have like that challenge of interviewing Belichick at halftime. Like, that's always something that I look forward to now because I'm like, what is he going to say? What is he not going to say? But it's been a good journey. I've never actually had any bad interviews, which is crazy to say with football. So that's a good thing.
So between baseball and football, what is the coldest you've ever been doing your job?
Wyoming, 2017 maybe. It was a late night game. So it was probably an 8 p.m. Eastern start or something. It was late. It wasn't the worst games for you is not when it's like below zero and freezing. The worst is when it's freezing rain because then you are soaking wet. The snow, at least like you can kind of protect yourself and it falls off. The freezing rain by far is the worst situation you can ever be in sideline. I would so much rather it be freezing cold because then you can like warm up on the bench. Or if it's snowing, it's like, oh, this is okay. I'm covered in snow, but I brush it off. When it is wet, freezing rain, you can't read any of your notes. Like just throw your notebook away. Like that's not even happening. You are soaking wet. The wind comes. You're freezing. It is by far, it was this one game in Wyoming. I remember I was joking around with my director, but I was like, if I left right now, do you think I would get fired? Like for my whole job. I was so uncomfortable. I mean, not even uncomfortable. My whole body was frozen and I was soaking wet. It was, I just remember going home and when you're so cold that you, like if you go into a shower, it hurts. Like it's just so painful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was bad.
Crazy stuff. I mean, it sounds horrible.
Yeah, so, I was covering Josh Allen, actually.
Of course. Now you're in Florida in the middle of winter, so I guess it balances out there. So I'm a big sports fan. My wife absolutely hates sports, but if I put on Big Ten Network and there's a rerun of Campus Eats, she's going to watch. So how did that opportunity come about for you? I'm sure you must have been so hyped as we started here talking about you always wanted to get into cooking.
Okay, so also a funny story. So when I was at ESPN on the production side of things, I worked for Monday Night Football, and I was on the crew John Gruden's first year. And my job was to help out in the features unit. So I would sit down with an editor and we put together these like awesome video packages that would air on Monday Night Football. And we would also do the rollout. So the rollout, for people that aren't familiar with TV, is basically some of the best clips and sounds from the game that we put together in like a 25 to 30 second piece that would air after the game before they were going to break. Like after everything was done, it's like, okay, thank you for watching this, you know, blah, 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 Monday Night Football. And the rollout would be rolling. So there was this guy, Mike, who was the editor, and we would sit together every Monday night for hours at a time, watching the game, picking out the best clips. It was a very fun job, but we would always be talking about food because obviously. And Mike left ESPN sometime when I was with the Red Sox, and I hadn't talked to him in like 6 or 7 years. And all of a sudden out of the blue, I get a phone call from him. And he was like, hey, Jenny, how are you? I was like, good, what's up? He's like, I started my own production company called Victory Pictures. I was like, that's amazing. So he's like a mastermind editor. He's incredible at what he does. And he said, I just got a deal with Big Ten Network for a show called Campus Eats. He was like, are you still into food? Like, are you still a foodie? And I was like, yes. And he was like, would you want to host this show? And I was like, what? I was like, so what's the whole premise? And he's like, basically we go to all the Big Ten schools and we eat at all the best restaurants. And I was like, yes, sign me up. Like, is this a dream job? Are you kidding? So we met in Chicago, and they interviewed a couple different guys, I believe, from Food Network, and they ended up picking Troy Johnson, who's been my co-host for now going into 4 seasons. And I remember meeting Troy in Chicago for the first time on Big Ten Network, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun, because he's literally the funniest human being I've ever met in my entire life. And we are like total brother sister. Like he's ridiculous in every way, in all the best ways possible. And we're now going into our 4th season of Campus Eats on Big Ten Network. And we were about to go out and shoot when the pandemic really started in March. And we were able to go out for a little bit throughout the year. And then hopefully we're going to pick it up later this year when things clear up a little bit. But it is a dream job. I mean, it is like you get paid to eat at amazing restaurants. Like,
great.
And then there's a sports tie-in.
I can't imagine anything better than that.
No.
What's the best thing you've ever eaten on the show, and what's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten on the show?
Ooh, okay. Best thing was this breakfast at a place called Golden Harvest. I believe it was Michigan State. If it was Michigan, I apologize. It was in the state of Michigan. And it was like this French toast that was like covered in cereal. And I just remember eating this, and every bite, I was like, this is the best thing I've ever eaten in my entire life. I mean, there's been some amazing food, but I just remember specifically that breakfast, and maybe I was like extra hungry that morning. I don't know, but it was to die for. The weirdest thing, I think, was it in Minnesota? We had to eat lutefisk, which is like a Scandinavian dish with like just fish that's like not really cooked. I'm probably totally butchering whatever it is, but I surprisingly, I don't like seafood. So working on a food show when you have to eat seafood, typically I'm like, this is really good. But I actually usually like, if it's like a crab cake or something, like I typically like. This was one of those things I was like, I will never eat that again. Like the restaurant was amazing, but just that meal, I was like, no. Yeah.
So I have a few more rapid fire cooking questions for you. Are you ready?
Go for it.
What is your personal favorite dish to cook, and what is your favorite meal that you make with your husband and your children?
Ooh. All right. Favorite personal dish to cook. I really like making hearty Italian like pasta dishes. I feel like that's always a good comfort food. So whether it's um, I make like this really good Tuscan chicken pasta, or like this sausage with gnocchi dish with mushrooms. I feel like that's always like a really filling, comforting dish. With the kids, so my husband is a really good griller. So he is in charge of all the smoking and the grilling when it comes to everything.
Will on the grill.
So
I like it.
he will on the grill. He makes these amazing brown sugar bourbon burgers, these cheeseburgers with brown sugar and bourbon in them. The recipe is on my cooking blog. And with the kids, so my daughters, I have 2 daughters, 1 and 2. So the 2-year-old helps me out in the kitchen. We make these protein bites that she's obsessed with. So it's just like peanut butter and oats and chocolate and coconut and honey. And it's these healthy little protein bites, but she calls them chocolate balls. So every time she wakes up in the morning, she's like, Mama, chocolate balls. I'm like, good morning, you too. So we actually just had the last one, so we need to make some more of those.
Got to teach him young. And also, when you owned your own catering business, what were your favorite events to cater? Maybe it was a friend's wedding. Maybe it was a personal event, family event. Maybe it was you were in the MC or the cook for a public event. So what were your favorite events to do stuff for?
So you have to remember, I was probably like 15 when I started this. So I got to cater a couple like neighborhood big gatherings. I did a friend's wedding. I did all the appetizers for a friend's wedding. I was like 16 years old. So I remember that was the one I felt the most pressure, because other things were like, oh, a graduation party. I'm like, yeah, if I mess up the food, it's not like the end of the world. But I was like, a wedding? Like you can't really mess up someone's wedding. But I was just honored that they would even give me the opportunity at that age to cook for them. So, and then I made dinner every night. So I grew up in a house where we sat down every single night at 6:30 and had family dinner. So my mom used to make it. And then I remember late in middle school and early in high school, I was like, can I just start making dinner every night? And she was like, absolutely, go right ahead. So, and that continues to this day. I mean, I always tell my husband, he's lucky. Like I make him breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. So that I'm home.
See, I wish we would have known you a little earlier, because my friend Nick over there, he got married December 7th, 2019. So had to know you would have been in the picture. We would have brought you.
I could have catered.
Yeah.
The food was out of this world then. My wife's Italian. I come from an Italian family, so we had to make sure that it was all about the food, and the cocktail hour was amazing. But the bride and groom get to miss the cocktail hour, unfortunately, at their own wedding.
Pictures?
Yeah, but I had him bring the food up to the bridal suite. But I mean, Joe is there. He could speak to just the amount of food.
Yes, it was an exceptional atmosphere. And
where was the wedding?
It was in Garfield, New Jersey, at the Venetian Catering Hall. I think both the McCourty twins, they got married there as well. So Snooky from the Jersey Shore also got married there.
Ooh, that's claim to fame right there. You want to know a weird fun fact about one of my first jobs?
Yes.
What I was a mitzvah dancer all over New York, Long Island, Jersey. That was like one of my first gigs, was being a motivational bar and bat mitzvah dancer.
Yeah, so I obviously I'm not Jewish, but my father's side of the family is, and I never had a bar mitzvah, so I made sure on my wedding that I was going up in the chair for the chair. It was an absolute must. She was so scared, but it was very fun.
I am Jewish, so we did the horror at our wedding, and Will was like, there's no way people are going to be able to lift me, but sure enough. And then I'll always remember his friends from Texas, and his friend literally came up, he goes, you Jewish people sure know how to party. I was like, yes.
Absolutely.
I'll take it.
You figured with him, maybe he's got a couple of guys his size you'd be able to pick him up.
Yeah, he was just fine. He had plenty of help.
When the chairs come out, everyone runs to get the chair. Everyone wants to lift the chair, so it's never an issue.
It's an honor.
Absolutely.
It's an honor.
And now, before we let you go, I have to ask this, and I'm not sure he's going to appreciate this, but what is your outlook for the Yankees this season? Because they have not broken through the last couple of years. Feel like this might be the opportunity they have. What is your outlook for the season?
I mean, just in talking with my husband about it, he's been doing a ton of work for CBS Sports HQ and kind of previewing what's to come. And it's interesting because that division in general has just like changed so much. You know, it used to be Red Sox, Yankees, like that was like the competition right there. And just recently, it's like it's a whole new ball game. So I think the Yankees always have a way to come out and be strong. But it's not an easy division anymore. And it's not because of the Sox. I think they're in the process of making all the moves that they need. And, you know, pitching, it always comes down to pitching and health in my perspective. You know, if you have guys that can put the ball in play, and it's all going to come down to who can stay the healthiest and who has the strongest starting pitching.
And they do need to stay healthy, so hopefully that can happen this year.
That's been a huge issue for them. That's for sure. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's been a problem.
Hopefully they stay healthy, and hopefully, whoever your husband has time, maybe he can do this with us. We would really enjoy to have him on.
He's a talker. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I've seen him do some spots before. He's really great, and you were really great, and this was a lot of fun, and we're super glad you had fun with it. And even though your dog wanted to make an appearance before, that's totally okay. We welcome as many guests here as we possibly can, Nick and I. But thanks again for doing this, Jenny. Thanks for coming on with us. Usually what we do here is we give our guests the last word. So if there's anything else you would like to share, if there's anything else you would like to promote, go right ahead. The floor is all yours. We wish you the best in the coming year. Obviously, the pandemic hit everybody hard, so we wish you and Will and your children and the rest of your friends and family very well as well.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I think just being appreciative of every opportunity that comes your way is something that everyone can carry forward in some aspect of their life. So thank you guys for reaching out. And I mean, as far as last words go, we talked a lot of cooking. So I've got a food blog. It's simply Dell-ishous, 2 L's. See what we did there? So if you guys have any questions about recipes, you can follow us on Instagram. It's my college roommate and I, we kind of started it up. And follow us around there. And then you can obviously follow me and my husband and our kids and our crazy life at Jenny Dell _. So thank you guys.
All right, there you have it. Jenny, thank you for your time. That's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. For our special guest, Jenny Dell, and for my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I am Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.